The Path to Awakening, Unveiling the Four Noble Truths and the Noble Eightfold Path in Modern Life. Welcome seekers to this space of contemplation and discovery. In our journey to unravel the profound truths of Buddhist teachings, we will delve into a core and foundational topic, the Four Noble Truths and the Noble Eightfold Path. These are not mere theoretical principles. They are practical guides that help us understand the nature of existence, confront life's challenges, and ultimately discover the path leading to nirvana, the state of ultimate peace and liberation. Buddhism is not a system of blind faith, but a path of realism. The Buddha, the Awakened One, did not deny the existence of happiness in life. Whether material or spiritual, for all social strata, happiness certainly exists. However, a crucial truth the Buddha pointed out is this: no joy or happiness lasts forever. They come and go, for all that arises from conditions will swiftly perish. Human life is a continuous pursuit of happiness from one joy to the next. This leads to a paradoxical reality. What we often call happiness, in its deeper essence, conceals suffering. It's akin to a sugar-coated pill, sweet at first, but revealing its bitterness once the sweet coating dissolves. In life, suffering doesn't always manifest as tears or lamentations. Sometimes, silent hidden suffering is the most excruciating torment. It's like a deep, concealed wound, so painful that even the slightest touch feels like a sharp sting. So what suffering did the Buddha speak of? The language the Buddha used for teaching was not Sanskrit or Pali in their formal classical forms of later centuries. Rather, it was likely Magadhi, an ancient Indo-Aryan language, or a similar dialect spoken by the common people in ancient India. Even today, India is a land of linguistic diversity with nearly 15 recognized major languages, including Sanskrit, Urdu, Bengali, and Hindi. Pali itself is not part of the Indic language group in the same way, but rather a Middle Indo-Aryan dialect of central India closely related to Magadhi. During that era, the upper classes and royalty of ancient India typically spoke Sanskrit, while the common populace communicated in dialects like Magadhi, the Buddha's native tongue. The lowest social strata might have spoken Ardha Magadhi or Prakrit's other colloquial variations. Throughout his lifetime, for almost half a century, the Buddha gave countless teachings during long walking journeys across North India. Yet it was only after his passing that his disciples, feeling the profound absence of their master, recognized the urgent need to compile his teachings into scriptures. Thus, for nearly 500 years after the Buddha's death, Buddhist scriptures were orally transmitted, relying entirely on the diligent memory of those who preserved them. It's crucial to understand that the Buddha did not speak Vietnamese, Chinese, English, or French. He spoke the Indian languages and dialects of his time. In both Pali and Sanskrit scriptures, the Buddha frequently used the term dukkha. This word often translates to suffering, which can make Buddhism sound overly negative or passive to modern ears. However, the true meaning of dukkha is far vaster, encompassing a broad spectrum of psychological and physiological experiences that cause disturbances, worries, and sorrows. Dukkha includes not only the obvious pains, but also the fleeting joys and aspirations of life. Generally, all mental activities and states such as joy, anger, love, hate, affection, and desire are in the ultimate sense considered dukkha. Any worldly happiness eventually leads to boredom, disappointment, dissatisfaction, and unfulfillment. Happiness, like a shadow, is never truly graspable. It's constantly pursued, Yet once obtained, it quickly comes and goes, leaving people in an endless search. This relentless pursuit is never true happiness. In essence, all mental variations that give us feelings of happiness or suffering originate from external conditions. The profound truth here is that there is no inherent suffering or happiness in the world. When suffering or happiness is experienced, the ego is present, meaning I suffer or I am happy. Therefore, if there is no I who suffers or who is happy, it is merely the sensations of the five aggregates form, feeling perception, mental formations, consciousness operating. No one actually endures suffering or enjoys happiness in a fixed, inherent sense. Suffering manifests in myriad forms, ranging from physiological pains to complex psychological states. Regardless of how suffering transforms or where people live, it generally falls into three types of suffering and eight types of suffering. Understanding the dimensions of suffering, the first noble truth, dukkha. The Buddha's teaching on dukkha is often misunderstood as a pessimistic view of life. However, it is fundamentally a realistic assessment. It's not about denying moments of joy, but about recognizing their impermanence and the underlying dissatisfaction that arises from clinging to them. Three types of suffering. Suffering of suffering, dukkha dukkha. This refers to the most obvious and direct forms of pain and sorrow. It's the ongoing suffering that piles upon itself, one sorrow following another. This includes physical pain, illness, injury, mental anguish, grief, sadness, fear, and emotional distress. It's the discomfort we universally recognize as unpleasant. The Buddha teaches that if we do not wish to invite suffering into our lives, others cannot cause suffering for us because our minds are unable to let go. Remember, when you are happy, know that this joy is not eternal. Conversely, when you are suffering, know that this pain is also not permanent. The clinging to the impermanent nature of happiness makes it a source of future suffering. Suffering of change, viparinama dukkha. This refers to the suffering arising from the inherent instability and impermanence anicca of all conditioned phenomena. Everything in life is constantly changing. What is pleasant now will eventually cease or transform, leading to discomfort or loss. This suffering is deeply rooted in our attachment to things, people, experiences, and desires. When these change or disappear, suffering arises. For example, the joy of a new possession eventually fades, or the happiness of a loving relationship faces the inevitable challenges of change or separation. All pervasive suffering, samkara dukkha. This is the most subtle and profound form of suffering. It refers to the underlying pervasive dissatisfaction or unease present in all conditioned existence simply due to its inherent impermanence and instability. It's the subtle hum of dissatisfaction even when things seem to be going well. It's the inherent inadequacy of all conditioned states to provide lasting contentment. This suffering arises from the very nature of compounded phenomena, which are always subject to decay and dissolution. It means that the mere fact of existing within a framework of conditions, the five aggregates, inherently carries a seed of unease. 8 types of suffering. Beyond these three categories, the Buddha also enumerated 8 specific types of suffering that are common to human experience. Birth is suffering. The very act of being born involves pain, struggle, and separation from a previous state. For the infant, it's a traumatic transition. For the mother, it's an arduous ordeal. Aging is suffering. The inevitable process of aging brings physical discomfort, deterioration of faculties, loss of vitality, and psychological challenges. Sickness is suffering. Illness causes physical pain, mental distress, and limits our capacity for enjoyment and activity. Death is suffering. The end of life is accompanied by physical pain, fear separation from loved ones, and the unknown. Sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair are suffering. These are the emotional distresses that arise from loss, disappointment, or unfulfilled desires. Association with the unpleasant is suffering, being forced to endure situations, people, or experiences that are disliked causes discomfort and aversion. Separation from the pleasant is suffering. Being parted from what is loved, cherished, or desired causes distress and longing. Not getting what one wants is suffering. The unfulfilled desires, ambitions, and expectations lead to dissatisfaction, frustration, and a sense of lack. These sufferings accompany us throughout our journey through life. The wise quickly realize this and seek enlightenment, while the ignorant continue to plunge into the vast ocean of existence, becoming lifelong slaves to worldly desires and attachments. The term suffering dukkha does not only describe physical pain or mental discomfort, but also includes anything that can cause or result in suffering. The truth about suffering teaches that due to the principle of impermanence, all forms of pleasure, even in a heavenly paradise, are subject to change and destruction. All forms of existence carry the seeds of suffering. Fearing suffering, people strive to seek pleasure, not realizing that pleasure deceives and betrays them. The more they pursue pleasure, the more disappointment they face, and thus they sink deeper into the ocean of suffering. In other words, suffering is the state of dissatisfaction and unfulfillment that makes people uncomfortable. Even the happiness pursued by people cannot last, as the conditions that created it are constantly changing, making no happiness truly lasting. The happiness we desire only exists temporarily, and the objects of our longing are merely transient and ephemeral, appearing and disappearing, just like trying to hold a shadow or grasp a fragrance. Even geniuses often grapple with existential suffering, weariness, and loneliness. As Ernest Hemingway once aptly wrote, "Happiness in intelligent people is the rarest thing I know." Unveiling the roots, the second noble truth, samudaya, the cause of suffering. Having recognized the pervasive nature of suffering, the next crucial step in the Buddhist path is to understand its origin. The second noble truth. Samudaya illuminates the cause of suffering, pinpointing it as craving or thirst, tanha. This craving manifests as the yearning for pleasures, desires, passions, and sensual indulgence which arise and develop wherever there is attachment, satisfaction, or happiness. Typically, we measure suffering by our feelings. If we feel bad, we assume it's suffering. But feelings themselves are not suffering. Rather, the fundamental cause of suffering is the clinging to desires. This means that desires themselves do not inherently cause suffering. It is the attachment to and grasping of these desires that lead to dukkha. Every day our eyes see, ears hear, noses smell, mouths taste, and bodies touch countless stimuli. Buddhism refers to these as delusions or objects of desire. Seeing a beautiful, expensive car ignites a passion and pleasure. Hearing praise brings happiness. Drinking a good wine or eating delicious food brings a sense of euphoria. However, these pleasant feelings or happiness do not inherently cause us suffering. Suffering begins to form in the mind once we wish to retain, prolong, or chase after these pleasures in the past. The Buddha and the saints still lived and operated within this world. They experienced flavors and food smelled pleasant, or foul odors tasted salty, sweet, sour, and spicy flavors, just as all human beings do. So, how do enlightened beings differ from us? Or how do we differ from them? The liberated person still experiences tastes as good or bad, salty or bland, meaning their senses are fully functional. The crucial difference between the sage and the ordinary person is that the sage does not cling to the good or bad taste. They eat simply to satisfy hunger. They eat good food, they eat bad food, without demanding it to be a certain way. Meanwhile, we only prefer delicious and exotic foods because they bring us pleasure and happiness. We want to prolong these moments of happiness and peace as much as possible. When the mind seeks after sensual desires, this is the cause of suffering. In other words, whenever we see, hear, taste, smell, or touch something, we know it very clearly, but we should not cling to these sensations. Currently, due to conditions, we have good food to enjoy. When the moment passes, the conditions end, and there is no more attachment or craving. Thus, the cause of suffering does not arise. Remember, material wealth in the world does not inherently belong to us, it only provides for us. Therefore, we do not need to discard it. What we need to discard are the rigid attachments and mistaken thoughts about the self. Thus, knowing and experiencing things without clinging to them means the cause of suffering will no longer exist. Desires are things brought about by external conditions and do not inherently exist within us. If we do not see money, the fire of greed does not ignite. If we do not see a beautiful woman, the heart of the infatuated man does not flutter. But how do we let go of desires? The Buddha taught that letting go does not mean destroying or discarding, but simply letting it be, and the desire will pass. We need only mindfulness to recognize clearly that it is a desire, it is greed, it is anger, it is delusion, and then let it go without clinging or attachment, and it will disappear. When seeing money, this arises the condition. The fire of greed ignites the craving that arises. Now, if we no longer cling to or crave money, this ceases the clinging. The fire of greed is extinguished. The craving ceases. By practicing letting go, the cause of suffering will cease. Usually, sufferings arise from the constraints of ideals and the complexities we create for ourselves. Sometimes we are too strict, criticizing everything, including ourselves. In reality, life in the world we live in never goes entirely according to our wishes. Therefore, if we practice proper letting go, the cause of suffering will permanently leave us. In conclusion, the immediate cause of countless sufferings is the impermanence of all things. This impermanence leads to birth, aging, sickness, and death. But the deep-rooted cause is craving. Craving changes unpredictably from craving sights, sounds, smells, tastes, touches to craving mental objects. It transforms extraordinarily from one form to another, enticing the human mind into its grip. Craving gives rise to sorrow. Craving gives rise to fear. For one freed from craving, there is no sorrow, no fear. Dhammapada, the cessation of suffering, the third noble truth. Nirodha, the realization of nirvana. Having explored the nature of suffering and its origins, the Buddhist path offers a profound antidote, the cessation of suffering. The third noble truth. Nirodha points to the ultimate goal of Buddhist practice, nirvana. When a practitioner completely eliminates suffering, meaning all seeds of greed, anger, ignorance, and craving are fully extinguished, they achieve the serene and free state of nirvana. Nirvana is not a metaphysical realm or a celestial paradise somewhere in the universe. It is a state of purity and freedom, reflecting the mind of a person who leads a holy, virtuous, righteous, and saintly life, free from the afflictions of suffering. In other words, Nirodha is a mental state where desires and evil deeds are eradicated. A person living in this state is considered fully liberated and has mastery over life and death. Such a person is the happiest in this world. During the Buddha's time, a Brahmin hermit once met Sariputta, one of the Buddha's chief disciples, and asked, Nirvana. Nirvana, my friend Sariputta, what is it? Venerable Sariputta replied, the extinction of greed, the extinction of anger, the extinction of ignorance. That is what people call nirvana. Speaking of nirvana, the Buddha also taught if beings have abandoned pleasures and desires and are filled with wisdom, they have attained the liberation from birth and death, the tranquility. They have reached nirvana, which is the eternal, everlasting state, right here in this life. Thus, nirvana is not a realm or a place, and of course, nirvana is not non existence. Clearly, nirvana cannot be described using human language or words. So, does nirvana truly exist or not? In the Milinda Panha questions of King Milinda, when King Milinda asked a similar question, Venerable Nagasena replied, Your Majesty, nirvana indeed exists and can only be comprehended with wisdom. If beings maintain a pure and upright mind, free from karmic hindrances and lowly desires, they will see nirvana. The king requested an example. Venerable Nagasena continued, Your Majesty knows something called the wind, but do you know its color, shape, thickness, or length? The king replied, The wind is invisible and formless. How can it be pointed out? Though it cannot be pointed out, it still exists. Now Venerable Nagasena concluded, Similarly, Your Majesty, nirvana truly exists, but cannot be described using words or language to show its form. So how can one know nirvana? The king asked again. Through the elimination of afflictions and karmic hindrances. By achieving peace and tranquility, one attains nirvana. Then Venerable Nagasena continued, just like a person who falls into a blazing fire, if they manage to escape to a cool place, they will feel immense relief. Similarly, one who escapes the fire of greed, anger, and ignorance will enjoy the serene happiness of nirvana. Just like a person who escapes unwholesome thoughts, they will experience the bliss of nirvana. Finally, those who overcome the fears of birth, aging, sickness, and death will enjoy the bliss of nirvana. In daily life, there are moments when we are free from concerns about beauty, wealth, fame, and gain, and we are not overwhelmed by greed, anger, and ignorance. During those moments, our minds are clear and light, and we are living in nirvana. Unfortunately, nirvana comes to us very briefly, because when our minds return to the practical realities of life, nirvana vanishes and worries and afflictions creep in. Therefore, the serenity and freedom of nirvana lie in our hands, and of course, worries and afflictions also stem from us. The path to liberation, the fourth noble truth, Magga, the noble eightfold path. Having comprehended the nature of suffering, its origin, and the possibility of its cessation, the final noble truth, Magga lays out the practical blueprint for achieving liberation, the noble eightfold path. This path is the way that leads practitioners back to a moral, humanistic life that does not cause suffering to oneself, others, or all beings. Among these paths, the Noble Eightfold Path is considered the exclusive way to elevate life and achieve the ultimate goal of liberation and enlightenment. The Noble Eightfold Path consists of 8 interconnected practices, often grouped into 3 categories: wisdom, panamorality, sila, and concentration samadhi. I, wisdom pana, right view, samadhi. Right view is the solid foundation upon which the house of the Noble Eightfold Path is built. There is no enduring house of the Noble Eightfold Path without diligently practicing right view daily to help us see and understand correctly. Right view allows us to clearly see that this worldly universe is formed through the aggregation of causes and conditions arising from countless interdependent origins from time immemorial rather than being created by a supreme deity. Modern science corroborates this understanding to a remarkable degree. Science discovers that the universe originated from a Big Bang from a singularity about 13.7 billion years ago, forming various galaxies. Before 1913, science largely believed the universe was limited to our Milky Way galaxy. It wasn't until Edwin Hubble measured the distance to the Andromeda galaxy, about 900,000 light years away, that it was understood the universe consists of many galaxies. In 1965, at the Bell Telephone Laboratories, scientists Arnold Penzias and Robert Wilson accidentally discovered the cosmic microwave background, CMB radiation, from the Big Bang 13.7 billion years ago, providing strong support for the Big Bang theory. Currently, the universe is still expanding until all hot celestial bodies, like the Sun, completely burn out their fuel, such as hydrogen and helium, and the universe will fall into darkness and coldness. This phenomenon is often referred to as the Big Freeze, or heat death of the universe, although some theories also propose a big crunch, where the universe will eventually contract back to a singularity, leading to an endless cycle of arising and perishing. In ancient times, when science was still in its infancy, religious beliefs were very strong. Today, as science progresses significantly, providing a clearer understanding of the world and human life, religious beliefs, including folk beliefs, are increasingly narrowing. Therefore, the Buddha reminded beings not to hastily believe anything, believe nothing, no matter where you read it or who said it, no matter if I have said it, unless it agrees with your own reason and your own common sense. The Buddha urged us to use wisdom to impartially examine and practice right view. Today's Buddhism is sometimes mixed with too many folk beliefs, causing it to lose its direction. Wrong beliefs are more harmful than no beliefs at all. In the West, religious faith in places like the United States, Europe, and even Australia is declining, especially among the youth. They are seeking a new direction in life, and many who do not believe in God, atheism, and agnosticism are increasingly turning to study, learn, and practice Buddhist teachings. They find more comfort and happiness practicing the Noble Eightfold Path and meditation methods. They feel more confident in their new way of life because they are the captains of their destiny, not anyone else. Conversely, many young Vietnamese people in the United States and worldwide know little about the Dharma beyond chanting and vegetarian meals without understanding and practicing the true Dharma. When the older generation passes away, Vietnamese Buddhism abroad might disappear like the Chinese generation in the United States 50 years ago. Regardless of how many large temples or Buddha statues exist, if the younger generation practices the Noble Eightfold Path in their lives, they will reap many benefits. Their families will live harmoniously, and everyone will live ethically, resulting in more happiness and peace. On the other hand, if they do not understand the Noble Eightfold Path, they are easily converted thinking all religions are good. Buddhism is a religion without blind faith because it is not a system of beliefs and rituals, nor does it accept the existence of one or more deities who control human destiny and whom humans must obey, serve, and worship. Therefore, the Noble Eightfold Path never includes right faith. Hence, faith in Buddhism is entirely different from faith in theistic religions, monotheism, or polytheism. The first branch of the Noble Eightfold Path is right view, meaning one must see and understand things accurately, clearly, and impartially. When one sees and understands accurately, faith is no longer necessary. Conversely, without accurate understanding, leaning one way or another, is called wrong view. Thus, Buddhism is the religion to come and see, not to come and believe. So, faith is not essential in Buddhism, and Buddhist disciples do not need faith, but only diligence. Buddhism does not demand blind faith from its followers, therefore, mere belief has no place. Instead, trust, based on understanding, does. The Buddha affirmed, "I am not a god nor a deity, but just a human who has conquered the world." The Buddha conquered the world, but did not need a throne to rule or subjects to honor. He lived freely with 3 robes and a bowl. But conquering one's mind is the greatest victory. The Buddha is merely a guide, and his teachings are the torch of wisdom, helping beings find the path to enlightenment and liberation for themselves. To explain the relationship between faith and wisdom, the Buddha taught a person with faith but no wisdom often increases ignorance. A person with wisdom but no faith often increases wrong views. Wisdom here must be understood as the ability to scrutinize and judge all matters. Therefore, if wisdom does not believe in the right Dharma, the practitioner easily falls into wrong views, increasing arrogance and obstinacy, failing to see their own mistakes. Conversely, a person with faith in the right Dharma but lacks wisdom to understand and discern properly easily falls into ignorance and superstition. From ancient times to now, reason and faith have always opposed each other. Reason uses logic and reflection based on experience and observation, while faith lies within the realm of emotions, which cannot be reasoned or explained. Thus, in revealed religions, faith in God is felt with the heart, not understood with the mind. Love felt with the heart is based on emotions and is very volatile sometimes, right, sometimes wrong, sometimes love, sometimes hate. Conversely, compassion arising from clear wisdom is based on objective equality without favoritism. Additionally, in revealed religions, miracles and supernatural powers are crucial. In contrast, the Buddha, having attained the 6 supernatural powers, regarded them as insignificant and inappropriate because the most important thing is cultivating wisdom for liberation. In Buddhism, people with miraculous powers are not necessarily enlightened or saints. According to the Buddha, the highest and most wonderful miracle is transforming an ignorant person into a wise one. Therefore, happiness or suffering depends on humans, not on any absolute deity. Since humanity appeared on this planet, countless ancient civilizations have risen from Egypt to Greece, Rome, and up to the present. The concept of God has fluctuated, changing from monotheism to polytheism depending on the era. If God is omnipotent, why does he allow humans to shape him according to their wishes? Thus, we easily conclude that along the course of human evolution, humans created God, not the other way around. Evidence is that the Chinese God is not the same as the Jewish God or the Indian God. So today, each religion creates its own God. Christianity has God, Islam has Allah, Hinduism has Brahman China, has Jade Emperor, leading to wars, hostility, and killing each other for the exclusive right to a non existent God. During the Buddhist time, Brahmanism believed that the soul called Atman, individual soul, was created by the supreme deity, and all living beings on this planet had souls. The soul transfers from one body to another continuously until liberation, when the individual soul merges with the universal soul, Brahman, the supreme deity, or the soul of the universe. When Buddhism emerged, the Buddha denied that humans were created by God and also rejected the concept of the soul, Atman, given by God. Therefore, during the Buddhist time, there was a clear distinction between Buddhism and Brahmanism. Buddhism advocated atheism, the elimination of the ego, self liberation equality, and lacked complex rituals and sacrifices. The Buddha did not accept the concept of an immortal soul or a permanent ego. Conversely, Brahmanism believed in the existence of the ego, and upon death, the ego merges with the universal soul for liberation. Therefore, people pray to the supreme deity, believe in the gods, and make offerings for blessings and forgiveness. In the Dhammapada, verse 145, the Buddha affirmed, "By oneself is evil done, by oneself is one defiled, by oneself is evil left undone, by oneself is one made pure. Purity and impurity depend on oneself. No one can purify another." After attaining the fourth meditation, the Buddha, with insight and the wisdom of a fully enlightened one, saw that all beings in the universe are the results of causes and conditions. This exists because that exists. This arises because that arises. This ceases because that ceases. One cause leads to another, forming the world and human life without any creator. Thus, the Buddha denied the existence of God in life, and of course, without God, there is no one to give anyone a soul. According to theistic religions, the soul is an eternal entity given by God to humans capable of transferring from one body to another or from one realm to another. In contrast, in Buddhism, there is no fixed permanent mind in the way often conceived, so how can there be a soul? The mind, according to Buddhism, is called consciousness vijnana. Consciousness is the awareness that constantly changes, is based on the psychological and physiological transformations of humans. Whenever the six senses, eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind, contact, the six objects forms, sound, smells, tastes, touches mental objects. For example, the eye sees forms, the ear hears sounds, the nose smells, sense the tongue tastes, flavors the body feels touch, or the mind cognizes mental objects, bringing countless thoughts to the mind, giving us awareness. Buddhism uses the term moment kana to refer to the smallest unit of time, and a moment occurs very quickly. Each blink of an eye can contain hundreds of moments, similar to the smallest unit of time measurement today, which is the nanosecond. When enlightened, the Buddha, with insight and the wisdom of a fully enlightened one, saw that sentient beings do not have a fixed, enduring mind, but only a continuous stream of thoughts connecting with one another, giving us the illusion of having a permanent mind. For example, In one moment, the eye sees a form, giving us the awareness of form, eye consciousness. In the next moment, the ear hears a sound, giving us the awareness of sound ear consciousness. The following awareness replaces or follows the previous awareness, continuously arising and ceasing, forming a stream of consciousness. But there is no fixed mind. The mind that follows replaces the mind that came before, continuously flowing in our being. Thus, consciousness in Buddhism is the continuous flow of thoughts, moments. Due to the mistaken belief of having a fixed mind, people think there is an ego within. Now, without a fixed mind, how can there be an ego or a self? This leads to the understanding of selflessness, anatta. For example, at night, looking at the highway in the United States, we see the car lights forming a continuous flow like a winding river. If we remove all the cars, the river of light will no longer exist. In other words, without the lights from the cars connecting there, would never be such a long stretch of light. The human mind is similar. Although each moment of thought is swift, continuously connecting those moments forms a stream of consciousness, which people mistakenly believe to be a fixed mind. Consider the record in the gateless gate of the first conversation between Bodhidharma and Huike. Bodhidharma was sitting facing the wall. Huike stood in the snow, drew a knife, cut off his arm, and said, "I cannot pacify my mind. Please pacify it for me." Bodhidharma said, "Bring your mind here, and I will pacify it." Huike replied, "I cannot find my mind." Bodhidharma answered, "I have already pacified your mind. The past mind is gone, the future mind has not yet come. The present mind is restless and constantly changing." So what mind was Huik searching for because of the mistaken belief in having a mind the Buddha taught? The mind is the greatest deceiver. Others may deceive you for a moment, but it will deceive you for a lifetime. If God is omnipotent and omnibenevolent, why did he create a world full of sins and suffering? Why did he create numerous natural disasters, destruction, and the killing of sentient beings? Where is his compassion? Can prayers reduce natural disasters, epidemics, wars, or human suffering? Therefore, Buddhism denies the existence of deities in human life. According to the spirit of Buddhism, humans must solve their own problems, like war and peace, happiness and suffering. War or peace is determined by humans, not by any gods or heavens. If humans live with tolerance and love, they transform war into peace. Conversely, if they pursue dark ambitions, peace turns into war and killing. Additionally, the movement of the earth volcanoes, tornadoes, and the law of impermanence, birth, existence, decay, and death cause harm to humans. Generally, it is due to human greed destroying their environment through wars, nuclear experiments, deforestation, and pollution, creating dangerous chain reactions for humanity. Humans, to satisfy their greed, go against nature by extracting millions of resources from the earth and sea, from diamonds to gold, silver, aluminum, iron, gas, and oil, and releasing millions of tons of toxic waste, causing suffering through natural disasters like earthquakes, tsunamis, floods, and droughts. Thus, humans cannot believe in a deity who would heartlessly punish and destroy humanity, causing widespread suffering and death. A massive earthquake occurred on April 25, 2015 in Nepal, with a magnitude of 7.8 on the Richter scale, 80 km northwest of the capital Kathmandu, killing over 8,000 people and injuring over 18,000. Subsequent smaller earthquakes caused further terror. More than 2 weeks later, on May 12th, 2015, another earthquake with a magnitude of 7.3 struck 83 kilometers east of Kathmandu, causing more damage. Nepal, although the birthplace of the Buddha, has only about 20% Buddhist population, with 80% being Hindu. According to Hindu customs, every 5 years, Nepal organizes a sacrificial ceremony, killing 250,000 animals, mostly buffaloes, goats, and birds. In the 2014 sacrificial ceremony, over 6,000 innocent buffaloes were beheaded, their blood staining an entire field red. Once Prince Siddhartha was traveling to Rajagaha and encountered a flock of sheep being led to the city for King Bimbisara's sacrificial ceremony. He went straight to the altar where the king and Brahmin priests were preparing to sacrifice a sheep to the deities. The prince untied the animal and preached to everyone. Everyone loves life, yet everyone enjoys killing. Everyone wants to create life. He spoke with deep compassion. Even though all beings are different, life is one. You cannot wash away your sins with the blood of animals. Asking the gods for forgiveness is futile. If the gods are benevolent, they will not forgive such evil deeds. If you commit evil, no matter how many animals you sacrifice, you cannot rid yourself of sin. However, whether good or evil, the gods will not forgive anyone. The sin of a person must be borne by themselves. That is the law of cause and effect. No one can escape it. The more you kill, the more disasters you bring upon yourself. Hearing this, the Brahmin priests took off their ceremonial robes, their hands still stained with blood. Hundreds of sheep were released, joyfully running through the streets, as if escaping from a hell created by human ignorance. The king then ordered an edict to be engraved on stone and carved into wood. From ancient times until now, we have committed a great sin by killing animals for sacrifice. But from today onwards, no one in the land shall spill the blood of any animal, for all beings share one life. Remember that blessings will come to the virtuous from teachings of benevolent life. When understanding this, humans need not fear worship or pray to deities anymore. Buddhism is neither a metaphysical path nor a ceremonial path. To Buddhism, the Buddha is a teacher, the one who discovered the path to liberation. Therefore, those who wish to escape from suffering should follow the path he walked. The Buddha is only a guide. Whether to follow the path is up to sentient beings. To achieve results, beings must be self-reliant and practice to reach liberation, not relying on the Buddha or any deities. In summary, Buddhism is not a religion of trade magic or promises. Liberation and enlightenment, or the serene peace of nirvana, come from beings themselves, not granted by the Buddha. Although Buddhism is the religion of compassion, wisdom, and courage, if people do not believe in compassion to love, bring joy, and relieve suffering to help sentient beings, in the ability to develop wisdom, to realize the truth, and understand the true nature of human existence in the universe, and in the courage to overcome storms and win over their ignorance and afflictions, and only want to pray to deities for happiness, then the path they walk is certainly not Buddhism. Therefore, without right view, living in ignorance, mistaking suffering for happiness, and the false for the true, we often face 5 wrong views. 5 wrong views. View of self, Sakayadithas. This is the mistaken belief that the body and mind constitute a permanent independent self or ego. It leads to the perception that the body and mind are oneself and belong to oneself. In reality, the body and mind are merely the workings of the 5 aggregates form: feeling perception, mental formations, and consciousness. The body, for instance, is the form composed of earth, water, wind, and fire. Thus, human life is the operation of these five aggregates, with nothing being a fixed self or belonging to a fixed self. Extreme views, antagahaditha, due to erroneous perceptions of the self, two extremes arise. One believes that the self perishes completely with death, which is annihilationism, uchedavada. The other believes that the self remains unchanged after death, which is eternalism, sasatavada. The Buddhist middle way transcends these extremes, acknowledging that existence leads to decay and death, but death is not absolute non existence, as decay leads to new existence, a continuous cycle of birth and death without a fixed, permanent self transferring. Wrong views, michadithe. This refers to beliefs that are fundamentally incorrect and contradict the law of cause and effect. This includes believing that life has no cause and effect and no retribution for good or evil deeds. It also encompasses beliefs that humans are creations of God, or that all events in life are predetermined by divine will, or that illness or disaster is due to the punishment of gods or spirits. All these fixed, unexamined views are called wrong views, leading one to live in delusion and darkness, causing life to lack clear direction. Attachment to views, silabhata paramasa. Some practitioners can easily see the errors in the view of self-extreme views and wrong views as they lead people to see life through delusional lenses, relying on erroneous views, causing life to become more chaotic. However, some still cling to and believe in these wrong views, unable to distinguish right from wrong, thus practicing attachment to views. Attachment to precepts and rituals, dithadasa. In Buddhism, precepts guide individuals to cultivate a more ethical life, laying the foundation for liberation and wisdom development. The threefold training clearly states that without proper practice of precepts, not just following precepts, the mind can never attain concentration. A concentrated mind leads to wisdom. Therefore, a Buddhist practitioner who breaks or violates precepts cannot build the house of liberation due to lack of foundation. Other religions promote unreasonable extreme precepts and rituals. For example, in India, Hindus worship cows and never eat beef. In contrast, Muslims and Jews do not eat pork but can enjoy steak. Because of such peculiar beliefs, Buddhism calls these beliefs attachment to precepts and rituals. A person who keeps a vegetarian diet but does not reduce greed, hatred, and ignorance gains no benefit and life remains turbulent. Conversely, a person who properly practices precepts, meaning they are always mindful and aware, constantly monitors and controls their body speech, and mind leads a life full of happiness, peace, and freedom. These five wrong views darken and delude the human mind. In summary, right view is seeing things as they truly are, and only the Four Noble Truths explain things as they truly are. So the Four Noble Truths include the Noble Eightfold Path, and vice versa. Right view is a practical lifestyle that Buddhist practitioners should implement and develop in all actions of daily life to eliminate wrong views and reap benefits. Thus, right view leads to happiness and peace. Right view also helps perfect morality, spirituality, and wisdom through awakening from within. Ultimately, the most crucial role of right view is to develop wisdom to see and understand all phenomena of human existence and the universe as they truly are, leading to liberation and nirvana. Furthermore, in the Samudaya Sutta, the Buddha taught people often lean towards two inclinations in understanding either existence or non existence. These are attachments to false perceptions. Because of these attachments, they cling to either the notion of existence or the notion of non existence. Beings mostly get entangled in attachment and clinging. Those who are free from attachment and clinging do not hold on to the notion of self. They know that suffering arises when conditions are present and ceases when conditions cease. They have no doubts. Their understanding is not influenced by others, but is self realized. This is called right view. This is how the Tathagata explains right view 1 with right view when contemplating the arising of the world does not see the world as non existent. One with right view when contemplating the cessation of the world does not see the world as existent. Attachment to existence is one extreme. Attachment to non existence is another extreme. The Tathagata, avoiding these two extremes, teaches the Dharma through the middle way. That is, this exists therefore that exists. This arises therefore that arises. From ignorance arises volitional formations. From volitional formations arises consciousness. From consciousness arises name and form. From name and form arises the six sense bases. From the six sense bases arises contact. From contact arises feeling. From feeling arises craving. From craving arises clinging. From clinging arises becoming. From becoming arises birth. From birth arises aging and death, and thus arises this entire mass of suffering. If ignorance is eradicated, volitional formations are eradicated. If volitional formations are eradicated, consciousness is eradicated. If consciousness is eradicated, name and form are eradicated. If name and form are eradicated, the six sense bases are eradicated. If the six sense bases are eradicated, contact is eradicated. If contact is eradicated, feeling is eradicated. If feeling is eradicated, craving is eradicated. If craving is eradicated, clinging is eradicated. If clinging is eradicated, becoming is eradicated. If becoming is eradicated, birth is eradicated. If birth is eradicated, aging and death are eradicated, and thus the entire mass of suffering is eradicated. Wisdom and ignorance are eternal adversaries. If a person lives in ignorance, chasing after sensual desires, they will never see the light of wisdom. Conversely, if one dispels the veil of ignorance, wisdom will immediately manifest like clouds clearing for the sky to shine or clear water, reflecting the moon. Wisdom does not fall from the sky, nor is it granted by any deity, but it is self-developed, following the path of liberation laid out by the Buddha. Therefore, when one directly perceives the truth, it is often called the eye of truth in the scriptures. Right thought sama sankappa. Right thought refers to thinking correctly in accordance with human ethics and the principle of dependent origination. Right thought is genuine and true, not merely prudent thinking, as commonly defined in worldly terms. Prudent thinking involves being cautious, thoughtful, considerate, and careful in actions to avoid mistakes and impulsive behavior, thereby yielding beneficial results for oneself and others. However, prudent thinking is only a small part of right thought, as it merely serves to satisfy temporary happiness in everyday life. While prudent thinking helps people avoid wrong decisions and achieve good outcomes, these outcomes still lead people astray in the orbit of greed, hatred, ignorance, and sensual desires, resulting in suffering and distress. Often, to gain wealth, one might resort to dishonesty, unfair competition, or harming others for personal gain. Thus, prudent thinking does not necessarily equate to right thought. Many people in the world practice prudent thinking daily, yet they still cling to wrong views and superstitions, believing the universe was created by a deity who predetermines human fate. They think some are destined for wealth and happiness, while others suffer in poverty, unable to change their divinely ordained circumstances except through prayer. In contrast, right thought reveals that the human universe arises from the principle of dependent origination continuously and without any mystical intervention. Since the advent of Buddhism, the Buddha denied the existence of a soul created by a deity, asserting instead the existence of consciousness or mind, which constantly transforms based on psychological and physiological changes. Thus, individuals can purify their minds, leading to better and happier lives and ultimately liberation. The Noble Eightfold Path is the most effective way to achieve this ultimate goal. No religion in history has promoted equality as Buddhism does. Consider the Buddha's words to King Pasenadi of Kosala when he accepted Sunita, a lowly worker, into the monastic community over 2,500 years ago. In a society deeply divided by caste, great king, in the path of liberation, there is no distinction of caste or race. In the eyes of the enlightened, all beings are equal. Everyone's blood is red, and everyone's tears are salty. We are all human beings. We must strive to provide equal opportunities for all to realize their potential and dignity. Therefore, I have welcomed Sunita into the monastic community. The Buddha revolutionized societal norms, abolishing all forms of injustice and social class distinctions in ancient India. Buddhism elevates human dignity and encourages the full development of intellectual potential. Today, many scientists, doctors, engineers, scholars, millionaires, and billionaires have risen from humble beginnings through determination and effort, supported by a society that offers equal opportunities. In contrast, religions based on theism and deities subject humans to fate, making them submissive and passive, contrary to the law of cause and effect in the universe. Misunderstanding this law leads to fear, superstition, and explaining natural and spiritual phenomena through superstitions. Such beliefs are termed wrong views and wrong thinking by the Buddha. For example, a person might do many good deeds, but still face many hardships in life, leading them to doubt the law of cause and effect. However, this law is just and impartial. The misfortunes they endure now are the results of past actions, and their current good deeds will bear fruit in the future. This concept is termed differentiated fruition in Buddhism. Observing a garden, we see some plants bearing fruit while others are yet to sprout. The law of cause and effect applies to all aspects of life, from the physical to the psychological. Understanding this law leads to mindfulness, precaution, and careful actions in body, speech, and mind. To reduce stress and anxiety, one should simplify life and practice ethical living. Speaking kindly results in being liked and respected. Holding anger makes it impossible to have a friendly smile. Thus, understanding the law of cause and effect destiny is within our control. If one cultivates spiritual awareness and right view, they can change their life. Otherwise, blaming fate or waiting for divine intervention keeps one trapped in a fatalistic mindset, missing the opportunity to improve life. According to Buddhism, we are the masters of our destiny, bringing joy or suffering upon ourselves through our actions. To achieve happiness, one must live ethically, constantly monitor body, speech, and mind and practice the Noble Eightfold Path correctly. When we perceive the world through our senses, sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch, all these perceptions enter the mind. The external world is complex and filled with illusions. Therefore, the Buddha taught that we must first purify the thoughts and ideas that enter our minds. Practicing right view helps us control and eliminate incorrect perceptions and maintain a direct, impartial, and objective understanding of reality. The second stage involves thinking without attachment to lust, harm, anger, or delusion, as all suffering and distress stem from these four toxins. Right. Thought thus helps us lead a peaceful and happy life, free from the orbit of greed, hatred, and delusion, forming a solid foundation for ethical speech and action, because all speech and actions arise from thoughts. The beauty of the Noble Eightfold Path lies in its interdependent nature, where each step reinforces the others, leading to deeper understanding and practice. Right view guides us to see truthfully in accordance with human ethics, dependent origination, and the path to liberation. Right thought then aligns our thinking with these truthful insights. Mastering. Right thought means deeply absorbing these truthful insights, which further refines our perception. This continuous purification of body and mind leads to ultimate liberation and wisdom. To develop noble character, we must nurture good thoughts and eliminate base ones, constantly cultivating personal ethics. Always think before speaking or acting to avoid causing harm to oneself or others. Overcoming thoughts of sensual pleasures. Daily, thoughts of sensual pleasures tied to forms, sounds, smells, tastes, and touch can drive people crazy. The Buddha did not deny the allure of beauty, pleasant sounds, fragrances, delicious tastes, and gentle touches. However, sensual pleasures have a double-edged nature, satisfying desires, and seeking happiness requires effort, toil, and hardship, but once obtained, happiness is fleeting and temporary. Thus, happiness is like a shadow that can never be grasped. It never stays. As soon as it is achieved, it becomes boring, and we seek new happiness, creating an endless cycle. Hence, pursuing sensual pleasures only brings more suffering. If greed is one of the roots of unwholesomeness, how can we live without desire? In today's advanced materialistic world, we must distinguish between wants and needs. We need essential things like food, clothing, housing, transportation, and computers to live comfortably. In contrast, desires arise when we seek to fulfill excessive demands, crossing the boundary of contentment. This causes suffering when wishes go unfulfilled or when seeking new happiness. Understanding this, Buddhist practitioners are not required to renounce all material conveniences. They can have what they need, but must know the difference between necessary needs and greedy desires. Right thought helps us think about the impermanent, transient, and fleeting nature of all worldly phenomena. The Buddha compared the dissolution of worldly phenomena to a dream, an illusion, a bubble, a mirage, morning dew, and lightning in the sky. Thinking this way gradually frees us from the bondage of worldly pleasures, leading to a peaceful and liberated life. A Western philosopher once said, "To attain noble happiness, avoid base pleasures." Overcoming thoughts of anger. The Buddha taught in the Dhammapada, "They insulted me, beat me, defeated me, robbed me." Those who harbor such thoughts will never let go of hatred, but those who abandon such thoughts will find peace. Therefore, to achieve peace, do not nurture thoughts of anger. The Buddha also taught Abandon anger, let go of pride, break free from all bonds, and suffering will no longer control you. Thus, those who harbor thoughts of anger are burning themselves with their own anger before acting against others. Living in hatred, one is tormented, lonely, and isolated. Hatred, anger, competition, jealousy, envy, inferiority, and resentment diminish one's character and bring turmoil and sorrow. To eliminate these base thoughts, one must cultivate the virtues of loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. Only compassion can erase hatred, bringing openness, purity, and coolness to the soul. No fire like passion, no sin like hatred, no sorrow like the aggregates, no bliss like nirvana. Dhammapada 202. Even if someone slanders the Buddha, his teachings, or his community, the Buddha advised his disciples not to be angry, dissatisfied, or unhappy. He taught, if you are angry, dissatisfied, or unhappy, you endanger your moral and spiritual foundation and cannot judge whether the criticism is valid. Instead, the Buddha advised, just as one who spits into the sky soils not the sky, but oneself, overcoming thoughts of harming others. People attached to their ego and possessions are ready to harm anyone who threatens their interests and dignity. If we value our happiness in life, why not respect the happiness and existence of others? Thus, if we do not want to suffer, we should not seek happiness at others' expense. The Buddha taught, all fear violence, all are afraid of death. Taking oneself as an example, do not kill or cause killing. Dhammapada 129. Even if we do not kill or cause others to kill, any action that causes harm to others in any form is unethical. In the past, the Buddha and his monks were not strictly vegetarians. They ate meat and fish when offered, but did not intentionally kill. The Jivaka Sutta Majjhima Nikaya, number 55, speaks of the threefold pure meat, or fivefold pure meat, which monks were allowed to consume. Jivaka, those who say, for the sake of the ascetic Gautama, they kill living beings, and the ascetic Gautama knowingly eats meat killed for him. Those who say thus are not speaking according to my teaching. They are slandering me. I say that there are three instances in which meat should not be eaten when it is seen, heard, or suspected that the animal was killed for oneself. I say there are three instances in which meat should be eaten when it is not seen, not heard, and not suspected that the animal was killed for oneself. Furthermore, the fivefold pure meat includes the above three, and meat from animals that died naturally or from animals eaten by other creatures. According to the Buddhist teaching, if one does not see, hear, or suspect, and certainly does not kill the animal oneself, then one does not break the precepts, meaning one should seek meat already prepared and sold in the market. The Buddha taught that those who do not create the karma of killing living beings will have a long life. Those who create the karma of killing, shortening the lives of living beings, will have a short life. Evil karma brings suffering, leading to a body prone to illness and weakness. The issue of vegetarianism and meat eating is a sensitive topic. However, in Vietnam during the Tran Dynasty Master Tu Trong, who had a younger sister, Empress Mei Tong Thuan Thien, hosted a banquet in the palace with both vegetarian and non-vegetarian dishes. Master Tu Trong ate without distinguishing between vegetarian and non-vegetarian food. The Empress asked, "How can you attain Buddhahood while eating meat and fish?" The master laughed and replied, "Buddha is Buddha, and I am me. I do not need to become Buddha. Buddha does not need to become me. Have you not heard the ancients say that Manjushri is Manjushri, and liberation is liberation? Discussion Master Tu Trung said Buddha is Buddha, and I am me, meaning the mouth is the mouth, but the mind is always the mind. Thus, while the mouth eats meat, the mind does not, so there is no defilement here. The Master wanted to break the attachment to the method of practice and emphasize the importance of cultivating the mind. For the liberated person, even if the mouth chews meat, the mind remains as calm as if chewing tofu. This exemplifies the saying, unattached to anything the mind arises, meaning even though the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind interact with forms, sounds, smells, tastes, touches, and dharmas, the mind remains calm and detached, leading to peaceful nirvana. This is the story of a liberated person, but as ordinary people, we should be cautious because our minds are still attached. About 500 years after the Buddha's nirvana, Mahayana Buddhism emerged, and Mahayana scholars introduced 5 new ideas to differentiate from Theravada Buddhism. These are transforming the ideal of nirvana of the arhats into the ideal of bodhisattva, introducing the 6 perfections paramitas, wherein compassion is placed alongside wisdom. During the Buddha's time, Buddhism only promoted self-realization without faith. Hence in the Dhammapada, the Buddha said, "Be a lamp unto yourselves. Take refuge in the Dharma. Follow the Dharma for liberation. Do not seek liberation elsewhere, neither in another person nor in another place." Expedient means upaya became essential, including the unimaginable realms, the Buddha worlds, and the Buddhas like Prabhutaratna appearing, or the Buddha using miraculous powers to shake the world, as in the Lotus Sutra or Vimalakirti Sutra. Such realms did not exist during the Buddha's lifetime. To suit the teachings of the non-dual world, Mahayana introduced the concept of emptiness, sunyata, and redefined all theories of emptiness to fit the new teachings differentiating from Theravada. To promote the bodhisattva ideal, Mahayana Buddhism advocated nonviolence, meaning bodhisattvas should not eat meat. Thus, some Mahayana schools advocate vegetarianism. This idea can be found in the Lankavatara Sutra, the Samdhinirmocana Sutra, and the Mahaparinirvana Sutra. However, some Mahayana or Vajrayana schools do not practice vegetarianism, such as many Japanese Mahayana schools or Tibetan Buddhism's Red Sect. Listen to the 14th Dalai Lama on vegetarianism. I also tried to be a strict vegetarian from 1965 and maintained it for about 22 or 23 years. Then I became weak, and the doctors advised me to change my diet. For those who can maintain it, it is best to be strict vegetarians. Therefore, being vegetarian is a good virtue, but more importantly, one must purify one's body, speech, and mind. Now, from the perspective of spiritual development, being vegetarian or eating meat is not the main factor leading practitioners to liberation. Practitioners must practice renouncing sensuality and unwholesome states for the mind to gradually become pure. Renouncing sensuality means completely detaching from objects of desire, which is physical seclusion. Renouncing unwholesome states means abandoning defilements, desires of the mind, which is mental seclusion. In other words, renouncing sensuality is purifying bodily karma, and renouncing unwholesome states is purifying mental karma. Thus, the Buddha taught that liberation does not depend on diet vegetarian or meat eating, but on the purification of the 3 karmas body, speech, and mind. In modern life, many things contribute to indirect killing that we often do not notice. For example, while gardening, we may accidentally kill insects. When infected, we take antibiotics, which kill countless germs living beings in our bodies. Even vegetarians, by consuming plants, indirectly cause the death of countless insects during farming, fertilizing, and pesticide use. Therefore, eating those products also involves indirect killing. Even pulling up a plant means taking a life. However, the Buddha taught any action done with intent is significant and constitutes karma. Stealing does not necessarily mean robbing a bank or shoplifting. Stealing means taking anything that does not belong to us. This manifests as greed, so when greed arises, it overshadows humanity, prompting one to take things regardless of the consequences. Today, in some developing countries, government officials from the top to the bottom shamelessly use their power to seize national assets and money, turning public resources into personal property. Though they live in luxurious mansions, these are the people's blood and sweat, not their own possessions. Conversely, countries like Japan or Singapore have shown exemplary ethical standards, earning global admiration. In Japan, during the 2011 Tohoku earthquake, 9.0 Richter scale, and subsequent tsunamis up to 40 meters high, there was no theft of any kind. Furthermore, lost money or items were always returned to their owners or handed over to the authorities. A Japanese director working in Vietnam hired a Vietnamese driver to avoid the chaotic traffic in Saigon. Before returning to Japan, the director said to the driver, "We know you have been siphoning off gasoline for many years and kept asking for a raise every year. We agreed because of the safety of your driving, but in truth, if you hadn't done so, we would have rewarded you even more." Besides killing and stealing, sexual misconduct also plays a significant role in family life. The Buddha always encouraged beings to remain faithful and not covet others. When one looks at a person of the opposite sex with lustful thoughts, it indicates a state of sexual misconduct. Those with sexual misconduct have impure minds entangled in unwholesome thoughts. Such impure intentions will eventually cause suffering for their family and others, potentially leading to broken homes, even violence, imprisonment, and innocent children losing their parents. Today, in civilized countries, revealing clothing is considered fashionable and beautiful. However, cultured and ethical people know that beauty and fashion do not necessarily mean revealing attire. Modesty and natural elegance are also beautiful. Psychologists say those who expose skin excessively often lack self confidence, harbor many complexes, and lack culture and ethics, only satisfying temporary desires. Thus, sexual misconduct leads to suffering, breaking family happiness, and turning peaceful lives into disgrace. Sensuality is the attraction and seduction of a person, making one lose clarity and live in delusion. Due to the dangers of sensuality, the Buddha taught, "Monks, I do not see any other form, sound, smell, taste, touch, that enslaves a man's mind as much as the form, sound, smell, taste, touch of a woman." The original text had woman's mind, man. I have corrected this to be consistent with the context of the sentence. Monks, a woman's mind is obsessed with that. Throughout human history, from east to west, many heroes have succumbed to beauty because of their infatuation with sensual pleasures. Practicing right action is not just about avoiding break-in precepts or fearing revenge or legal punishment, but more importantly, it is about avoiding cruel, harmful actions that bring immeasurable suffering to others and oneself, both now and in the future. Understanding the law of karma strengthens one's resolve to abandon unwholesome actions, because what we do today, we will reap tomorrow. The Buddha encouraged beings to always practice right action in life, because wrongful deeds make the mind impure, causing constant anxiety, fear, and sorrow. Conversely, rightful actions benefit oneself and others, bringing a light, serene, and joyful mind. In conclusion, practicing right action is not only about not committing evil deeds, but also about doing all good deeds, meaning do no evil, do all good. Without moral training, people become evildoers, and life becomes their victim. No one dares to claim to be perfect, but if we act rightly, refrain from killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct, and practice love, help others, and create good karma in every situation, the path we walk will be calm with flowers blooming along the way. But the highest right action is to cultivate merit and virtue towards liberation and enlightenment. The Buddha also taught right thought gives rise to right speech, and right speech gives rise to right action. Having cultivated the seeds of right view and right thought in the mind, the Buddha guides us to another crucial aspect of the Noble Eightfold Path, morality sila. This is the bedrock of all wholesome behavior, the bridge connecting thought and action, helping us live harmoniously, not only with ourselves, but also with the world around us. Morality in Buddhism isn't a rigid set of rules or dogmas to be adhered to out of fear of punishment. Rather, the essence of sila lies in living ethically, cultivating virtues, and acting according to one's conscience. Proper practice of sila ensures a peaceful and happy life. Conversely, neglecting morality leads to a life filled with turmoil and suffering. The Buddha introduced sila to encourage beings to live a pure and ethical life. Whether to practice it or not is entirely up to each individual, as the Buddha has no power to punish or reward anyone. However, according to the law of karma, if we sow wholesome seeds, we will reap good results and happiness. Conversely, sowing unwholesome deeds will lead to suffering. The Buddha envisioned the house of enlightenment as having 3 floors. The first floor is the solid foundation, and to ensure this house of enlightenment is strong, the practitioner must build a firm base, which is morality sila. Therefore, breaking sila is akin to collapsing the house of enlightenment. Fully practicing sila means living a moral life, making one's life light, serene, and free from worries and sorrow. The second floor is concentration samadhi. After leading a pure life, the mind becomes serene, allowing the practitioner to enter and practice various levels of concentration. The third floor is wisdom pana, the highest and ultimate goal of Buddhism. Once the mind is settled in concentration, the practitioner continues using insight meditation, vipassana, to develop wisdom, directly perceiving the truth. The Noble Eightfold Path is a continuous process with closely related interactive and mutually supportive elements. The Buddha first introduced right view so that individuals have an accurate and unbiased understanding of themselves and the world around them. Following this, the Buddha introduced right thought, because only with correct understanding can the mind think of righteous and beneficial things for oneself and others. Incorrect understanding leads to wrong thinking inclined towards satisfying the desires of the ego. Greed, hatred, ignorance, and sensual desire. After right thought, the Buddha introduced right speech, right action, and right livelihood because thoughts turn into speech and actions. The trio of body, speech, and mind are the main factors that help people live peacefully, happily, and tranquilly. Conversely, the same trio can cause people to fall into suffering, making life tumultuous, and of course, creating bad karma leading to future suffering. In summary, the body includes right action and right livelihood. Speech includes right speech, and the mind includes right view and right thought. The entire Buddhist teaching aims to help people purify their body speech and mind improving life to become noble light, happy, and peaceful. Right speech, samavaka, the power of words, speech plays a crucial role in life as it directly reflects relationships between people. It's the communication bridge that fosters understanding and sympathy, but it can also lead to opposition, enmity, and jealousy. In daily activities from family to society, speech is the bridge that brings people closer, making life more meaningful and happy. Conversely, speech can cause discord among siblings, separation between spouses, parents' anger towards children, and neighbors, or friends turning away from each other. Under normal circumstances, speech reflects a person's character, except for those who are hypocritical. In modern advanced countries, people have even developed sign language so everyone can converse and exchange thoughts. Therefore, speech brings people closer, making it easier to understand and share any feelings. When one can express themselves, the frustrations in their heart are relieved like releasing water through a dam. In family life, every parent wishes for their children to be happy and find their own path. A smart child isn't necessarily a happy one. However, a child who feels loved is nurtured to be independent, dream big, have clear life goals, and always know what to do in the future to be happy. This depends on how parents love, communicate, and teach their children from an early age. Parents want to teach their children to read to develop their intellect and to shape their independence, but often fail due to the children's resistance. The main reason is that children lack self assessment abilities to motivate themselves to study and listen to their parents. To help children develop self confidence and self assessment abilities, the first step is to make them feel important to their parents. Thus, understanding the meaning of life to show this nothing is better than daily gestures and actions such as closeness, talking patience, and praise. These are the bridges that bring parents closer to their children. However, excessive pampering and fulfilling all their demands make children dependent negative, lack the drive to strive, and easily fall. Most importantly, in any family, parents are the direct role models for their children. If parents live honestly, kindly, and friendly, children will follow their example.